8 examples of SJW ethics and morality. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and I was just thinking about morality as it relates to religion and ideologies, partially brought on by something that Dr. Jordan B. Peterson said when he was on Louder with Crowder, which was that religion shouldn't necessarily be judged as harshly as people claim it should a lot of the time, implying that he preferred religion to ideologies like fourth wave intersectional feminist social justice. This is something that I would love to hear more about from Dr. Peterson, so if he wants to chat with me on a live stream, I'd really be into that, because I would very much like for him to talk with me about the radical fairies and how they used to be their own individual kind of a cultural label that I used to rub shoulders with. But now that culture of gay men that are kind of like hippie-like and they have their own land is falling victim to a hostile takeover by social justice feminists. I think he'd be interested in the story, and I'd love to hear his take. Anyhow, I was thinking about religion as compared to the fourth wave intersectional feminist social justice warrior ideology. And while I am not a fan of most religious people and consider myself agnostic, I do kind of think that most religious people that I've known are at least more decent human beings than social justice warriors. You see, in religion, there is generally at least an undercurrent of being a decent human being for one's own sake. Although there's plenty of awful Christians, for example, the notion to love thy neighbor at least tends to be present. With SJWs, I see almost nothing similar. Instead, we have all sorts of wacky versions of ethics and morality in SJW land. Example number 1 of SJW quote-unquote morality is that they certainly believe in original sin. The concept of white privilege, for example, which is already arguable in many instances, is not just a gentle reminder for white people to admit that they have certain advantages in specific situations. No, it is much more than that. SJWs don't just want you to admit that you have white privilege. They want you to admit that the grand total of Western civilization benefits you as an individual at the expense of all racial minorities, and therefore you have to be committed to actively dismantling the system in the exact way that they want you to at any given moment. And if you aren't actively following their orders in regards to how you are supposed to dismantle this system that supposedly benefits you as a white individual at the expense of all racial minorities all the time, then that makes you a white supremacist to them. Basically, it's not dissimilar to being born a sinner and having to repent for the sins of everybody on earth for the rest of your life because you were born. And I'm not the first person to make this point. Example number 2 of SJW ethics and moral principles is quote-unquote callouts. You see, SJWs have no official doctrine in regards to how they punish people they think have done something wrong. There is no Sharia law for SJWs exactly. Instead, they mostly just rely on mob rule and call-out culture to enact justice on those they feel have done something transgressive to their ideology. This is completely non-judicial, of course, and has resulted in people like prized cancer researcher Tim Hunt losing his job over a misconstrued liberal joke. Call-out culture is toxic and rampant, and even a lot of fourth-wave intersectional feminists know that and admit it, and yet they continue to both partake in it and perpetuate it with sentiments and articles encouraging it. Number 3 of their twisted version of morality is to hate thy neighbor from the get-go and assume the worst in everybody. SJWs never take anybody at their word or give anybody the benefit of the doubt right off the bat, unless they're black lesbians in wheelchairs. And even if you've earned their trust over a long period of time, they'll throw you under the bus if somebody with more oppression points has a problem with you. I think this is why SJWs take such particular effort to look ridiculous in a peacock-like display of freakishness so often. They are signifying complete tribalistic allegiance to the herd with their brightly colored dye hair and oddly colored lipstick, letting SJWs know that they will sacrifice any normalcy to appear as if they are down. They want to be down with the social justice, man. They're cool. They're feminists. They're going to be on the right side of history. The future is female. If you aren't a black lesbian in a wheelchair, you will undoubtedly have to prove yourselves to the intersectional feminists. You have to prove that you have some intersections of oppression, and then you can hang out with their crowd. So you can make up a mental illness and say that you're pansexual, stuff like that. And if you aren't intersectional enough, you will have to be obedient. If they are willing to have you around at all, which they probably won't be if you're a white male, just for the record. And when you prove yourself, this doesn't mean that you are allowed to just explain to them that you are a good person. That would be too easy. They will generally put you through a hazing process where they say awkward things to you or ritualistically humiliate you, forcing you to act like you like it. Example number 4 of SJW morality is encouraged gluttony. In the Bible, gluttony is a sin, but in SJW land, gluttony is more than perfectly acceptable. And these people will say their weight is none of anybody else's business, but then they'll attempt to garner writing careers where they talk about it constantly, kind of like Kitty Stryker shown here. Fat positive or body positive fourth wave feminists like Lindy West usually probably claim that body positivity isn't really about encouraging obesity, but instead about getting rid of the negative stigma against overweight people or whatever. As if getting rid of a negative stigma doesn't have a side effect of encouraging something. I don't see how they miss that logic. However, I know for certain that the simple getting rid of stigma notion isn't always even true in terms of the body positive movement. Because when I lived in the Bay Area, friends of mine told me that they'd have body positive potlucks and stuff where people would fry bacon and cook things with the bacon grease, etc. And it was this, yeah, we're fat and it's awesome kind of a thing. It sounded like a recipe for an eating disorder if any of these women have children. Example number 5 of SJW morality is eternal condemnation for anybody that they view as ideological opponents. Social justice warriors seem to have an inability to see that somebody can ever change, and generally they cannot see any room for nuance in regards to individuals and their opinions. These people demand ideological purity from people, and if that doesn't happen, they will view people as perpetual sinners. They want to label people as racists, for example, and they think that the people they think are racists were always racists and will probably always be racist unless they become their bitch. They don't want you to be their allies, they want you to be their bitch. When you try to talk to them about Trump voters, for example, they cannot fathom that any of them are not full-blown 100% racists, even when we know several of them voted for Obama twice. They feel that either you're with us or against us. I used to have this friend that I thought was cool for a while, but turned out to be a self-righteous, racist asshole. She is an SJW, which generally means a racist, self-righteous asshole, and she's half black and half white. And I was trying to explain to her that there are some white people who are likely becoming more racist recently as a result of things like the Black Lives Matter rioting and beating up white people randomly on the street for no reason. She just said, "They were always racist." I told her that racism was a learned behavior, and her response to that was pretty funny. She said, "Not me. I was born with a white mother and a black father, so I learned not to be racist pretty soon after I was born." Basically, it sounded like she was saying that everybody should be assumed racist since birth until proven innocent, except for her, apparently. Example number 6 of SJW's dodgy moral compass is complete and obvious double standards. Anybody they deem oppressed can get away with murder, basically. These people can absolve themselves of guilt at any moment instead of allowing any sort of introspection, just so long as they can remind themselves that they are victims in some way. Oh, I just physically attacked somebody? Well, it doesn't matter. She's not experiencing oppression like I am. She's not trans. Example number 7 of SJW's loose relationship with ethics is that none of them have any regard for honesty. They will always listen and believe their comrades' words if it suits the narrative. People know that they are lying, but they still keep listening to them and won't investigate the counter-narrative. Take Gamergate, for example. I've come across numerous SJWs who know that Anita Sarkeesian has definitely lied about numerous things, but they refuse to watch Sargon or Thunderfoot videos that expose these lies in great detail, because they still believe the overarching feminist narrative that feminists are the good people and that the gamers are meanie, misogynist men. They're mean men. They're mean and they're men. They don't understand that the feminist narrative around Gamergate is seriously like 5% of the whole story, which is just, we tried to make the video game industry more welcoming for women, and then the meanie misogynists got mad and sent rape threats. In reality, the other 95% of the story is all the various specific instances where the feminists were caught red-handed lying, colluding with journalists and media, and the several other instances where there isn't absolute proof, but it is fairly obvious that the feminists were orchestrating their own victimization. Still, feminists refuse to even learn about any of it because they want to believe in their ideologies so badly that they want to believe Anita Sarkeesian didn't do nothing. Example number 8 of social justice ethics is kind of like their version of court, which is heart space and safe spaces, depending on which crowds you run in. Heart space is supposed to be where people communicate with their complete and honest emotions. Really, heart space is basically court for hippies, and you can expect to be punished for your emotions if you don't tell them what they want to hear. Safe spaces are similar, as they are not safe for anybody who isn't constantly victimized by enough intersecting oppressions. I have a whole video about safe spaces not actually being safe. Unless you're, a black lesbian in a wheelchair, then you probably would love safe spaces. All right, that's all for today. Drop me a comment and stay tuned.